work at a global company. I'm quite sure you've heard of us. And most of my day-to-day work is done in English. As you heard, my name is Troed Sångberg. I'm a director of research at Sony Ericsson. I find that to be a boring title. I usually use the title futurist. But why am I standing here, being Swedish, talking to you in English? Turns out that values, ideas, thoughts and innovation for bilinguals, and in Sweden we are bilinguals, they are different dependent on which language we are using. So the thoughts I had and the ideas and what I want to convey would be different if I was talking to you in Swedish versus English. And it's not even by choice. A famous research study was done in Spain where they asked people about what they thought about other people. So their fellow human beings, and you know in Spain there are Basques in Spain. And when they answered, the answers were different depending on which language they used. So I'm going to talk to you in English today, else I'm not sure I would tell you the things I want to tell you. Now, I said I was a futurist. What does that mean, really? I look at exponentials. I project, no I can predict. I project different kinds of futures. One of those projections that has been true for a long time, you've heard about it called the Moore's Law, is that the computing power increases exponentially. So computing power, if you buy something for $1,000, in 2030, 2035, such a computer for $1,000 will be as powerful as a human brain. That's powerful. We believe ourselves to be quite powerful when it comes to thinking. A few years after that, one single $1,000 computer, and you all know that those computers will be mobiles, is as powerful as all human brains combined. Now, I'm not going to talk to you about 2040 today. That's a bit further ahead than I think that our interests are. But those are the things, those are the projections that we need to do today to understand what we should be doing right now. I'm going to back a bit from 2040. I'm going to go back about 8,000 years. There were about 10 million people on Earth, and humans lived in small pockets of civilization. Just a few houses or huts in what's today the Sahara Desert. That was a savanna back then, very lush green savanna, and that's where most humans lived. When they sometimes met, so a few people lived over here, and sometimes every year they talked to a few people over there, exchanging thoughts and ideas and whatnot. And then catastrophic climate change happened, and Sahara became the desert we know it today. And humans had to do something. So they moved together to the Nile Valley, because that's where there was water. And we get the rise of the first human cities, the first human civilizations. Now, the side effect of that is that more humans got together and started exchanging more ideas and more thoughts. That led to the invention of language. Language is pretty amazing. Before this time, we had to tell everyone what we wanted them to know, over and over and over again from each generation. Now we can just tell people, go look at the stone. That's pretty amazing. That of course led to the Library of Alexandria. Everyone here knows about the internet. The Library of Alexandria was the internet of the day. It collected global human knowledge. And they had a pretty interesting way of doing so. If you wanted to trade in Alexandria, you wanted to dock your ship in their harbor, they asked you, do you have any books? And you had to answer. If you had any books, they took your books, made a copy of them, and gave you the copy back and put the original in the Library of Alexandria. Now some speculate that's where we get the word copyright from. I don't think so, but it's an interesting way of collecting knowledge. Everything was available there. Now, moving ahead, Gutenberg invented the printing press. Now, the Chinese did that several centuries before, but he at least used metal. This was sort of being able to take all that knowledge and distribute it much simpler. So quicker distribution of knowledge between humans. A monopoly came down, and it wasn't without a fight. The telegraph was the first real-time chatting technology. Now, not only could we spread information much faster between different places on Earth, the operators who used the telegraphs, they actually sat there and talked in real time over large distances. If I had an idea, now it could be spread over a continent in a day or two. Newspapers. If Gutenberg made it possible to distribute large amounts of information easily to many people, newspapers did it really cheaply. Everyone knew when the newspapers came out what was happening in the world. And if a newspaper was printed in Europe, a few weeks after, you could be pretty sure that all the newspapers had printed the same thing in the US. Cameras. Instead of having to rely on tales, a giant squid sunk my ship, I promise. We now started to requesting pictures where it didn't happen. That's a big shift from just believing what people told us to being able to question it and say, if you don't have picture proof, I don't believe you. And people did not believe about giant squids, but we know today that they do exist. The telephone. Telegraph allowed operators to talk in real time together. The telephone allowed us to communicate between places. I could reach someone and tell them about the idea I had in real time. Television. We usually believe the world looks the same all over. It's because of Hollywood, the biggest human global equalizer that we had up until 1995. No matter where we go, it looks the same. It's very good for information spreading. One of the best things that globalization has done. Humans are slow at conveying information. I'm pretty slow when I'm talking here to you. You're probably quicker when I have interesting discussions with you later. Computers are quite quick. They change large parts of human knowledge in no time between each other. And connecting computers to the telephone network eventually gave us the internet. I'm not going to go into details of the internet. I'm going to talk about, no I'm not, the mobile phones. What is a mobile phone? Well, it's just taking the telephone opportunity and saying that instead of being able to communicate with a place, I can communicate with a person. A lot of people think we have mobile phones today. We don't. These are mobile internet devices, and this is a big difference. I'm not interested in just being able to talk to people. I'm interested in accessing the Library of Alexandria of our time, the internet, wherever I am and whatever I'm doing. That's why these devices are so popular. And this is where we are today. This is not likely to stop. If we look at all the technological evolution of human communication that I just described, there's no reason to believe that this is the end-all of human communication. And one of the things that is in near time, over coffee I'll talk about in the further future, but would be augmented reality visors, a different device. Now this is I use glasses. They give me augmented sight, slightly. If I can get all the human global knowledge accessible here, instead of having to pull it out from my pocket, that could be an interesting thing, an interesting technological development. This was a bit about communication history. Let's talk about information history. If we take all the human technical information that was available at the start of the Common Era, and we name that after a famous philosopher who was born then. So let's call that all of human technological information 1J. That's it. That's everything humans have done up until year 1. It took 1,500 years to get to year 2. Another 250 years to get 4J. 150 more to get to 8J. 50 to get to 16J. Today, this is what it looks like. It took 1,500 years to double the amount of human technical information. Today, we are doubling the amount of information on the world around us every 6 to 24 months. So about every year. Now, I talked about how many people lived on Earth. I went from 10 million, if you checked on the slides, so we went to 7 billion. And some say, well, that's of course why we're doubling the amount of information all the time. We're more and more humans. You might have heard about the population explosion, which doesn't exist. Rate of human population growth has been declining for decades. And this has actually been a worry. If our innovation is connected to human global population, maybe our innovation will go down. Luckily, it's not true. Thanks to digitalization and communication, the rate of our innovation and information gathering is on a completely different exponential since the invention of computer networks. It's said that Newton said that he's seen further because he stood upon the shoulders of giants. It was Bernard Charters who said it already in the 12th century. What they were talking about already back then is that there are no new innovations. We're just building on top of what already exists in small steps. For us, information, the abstract concept of information, everything we have collected, is that giant upon whose shoulders we're standing. That's what we're doing here today, exchanging information. And we are not computers. We're not just passing it around. We like to talk about it. That's what we do. And we're going to do that over coffee. The rate of innovation, the exponential development that we're all talking about, things happening faster and faster and faster, depends upon mind-to-mind latency. That's why I talked about human communication history. The latency, the time it takes to exchange ideas, and the bandwidth correlates directly to the amount of innovation we're doing. That's why we want to innovate all these technical gadgets whose sole purpose is to allow our minds to more quickly communicate. And the examples of this would be the applications in Android App Store, it's an exponential. The applications in a competing App Store, it's an exponential. The mobile data traffic in Sweden is an exponential. The number of photos taken by all humans globally every year is an exponential. Mobile CPU power is an exponential. It turns out, whatever we are doing, our business, the business we're all in, is an exponential development over time. This is hard to grasp. Human evolution has not made us ready, has not wired our brains to understand exponentials. The internet in the consumer mind is 16 years old. If I ask people, if you take everything that has happened the last 16 years, and you then ask yourself what will happen in the next 16 years, they think those two things are about the same. It's not true. All the development we've done during the last 16 years will happen during the next 8. That's the rate of development. And if we're not prepared, there is a point in time where we will look at our business and say, oh, something happened. So something is going faster than we expected. This is not going according to our plans. The most dangerous thing we can do is no change. The next most dangerous thing to do is say, oh, there has been a change. Let's change. Change is perpetual, else you'll always be left behind. It's said that anything that touches digital becomes exponential. It's not only digital. Digital is just a way of expressing that it's easy to innovate from. This is a product. It combines Duplo bricks and brick tracks. If you've got children, you understand the purpose of this. How cool is it to build a Duplo railway thing? This is from Thingiverse. It's a downloadable drawing for 3D printers at home. And as one of the commenters said, I mean, the product is great, but it probably breaks a few design patents or copyrights or something like that. But it's downloadable and it's printable at home and it fulfills a consumer purpose. And since it's downloadable, the adoption rate can be exponential. There's also no packaging involved, since it's just downloaded and printed at home. So let's talk about rights. You all recognize this guy, really famous. This might help. I'm talking about Richard M. Stallman, the founder of the GPL open source license and the Free Software Foundation. He did not like people doing things he could not work with. The things that we produce at big companies aren't perfect for all customers, and he wanted to be involved. Tim O'Reilly, founder of O'Reilly Publishing, the popular Web 2.0 conferences, and the coiner of the term Web 2.0, He said, I love your web service, and I love your web service. But if you don't let me extract my data and have these web services communicate, I won't be a happy customer. There are a few unhappy customers, very famously, that originated in Sweden, who said, dude, your industry, don't even try and have me to buy the same piece of music for each and every device I want to use. I'm of course talking about the pirate party. What these three had in common is that they are part of something called the participatory culture. A word I love, participatory, because humans love to participate, to join in together. That's what we are doing here. And culture, because it's so misunderstood. If Rembrandt had been living today, high culture Rembrandt, he'd be working at Sony's camera department. Because the only thing Rembrandt and his fellows tried to do was to, as accurately as possible, depict reality, inventing new materials and techniques doing just that. Eric von Hippel started talking a bit in the 1970s about where innovation comes from, and he wrote a few books. It turns out that corporate R&D departments aren't the end-all of innovation. I'm working in one. Beginning in the 70s, we could see this graph taking off. It's up to 70% today. It's consumer involvement in product R&D. When we do new things, it turns out that in 70% of those cases, it's done by our own customers. And I don't like those words, consumers. It's a very interesting relationship. I do something, you buy it. I don't like the word customer either. Also a one-way relationship. I do something and you're the receiver. I like the word colleagues, because that's what we all are in this room, working together. A company that understood that, and everyone has to talk about Steve Jobs, was Apple, who said, forget about the distributors. That's what the whole music industry did wrong. Focus on the end customer of the things you're doing, always. That's a starfish mentality. You want to run a successful company today, you have two choices. You can do it distributed, decentralized, and let the best persons do what they want to do and what they're good at doing. Or, which is unfortunately quite common still within Swedish industrial society, you have a central nervous system, an executive, ordering the legs what they should be doing. And that system fails immediately when the head or the legs aren't executing what they should. The starfish you can split in half, it becomes two. That's a meritocracy. He or she who knows the most or does the best work should also be enabled to doing it. Meritocracy is very similar to Darwin's survival of the fittest. Now, evolution says that survival of the fittest is a good thing. That's why we are here. I like it. I want to work in a fit company. But to many, working in existing structures, this is really, really scary. Because it upsets the status quo. Practitioners of old are very afraid of the new. And it's actually a part of our evolution, part of our genetics, to be afraid of new things that happens. It has served us well. It doesn't serve us well when the factory dies. The industrial society had factories, we worked in factories. Today we don't in the informational society. Gartner said in 2015, work will become less routine, characterized by increased volatility, hyper-connectedness, swarming, and more. Swarming is starfish mentality. You have a product idea, you have 3 others who want to work with that, you go with it. We trust you. That's swarming. A few decades ago, humans, or at least Americans, went to the moon. Our generation, using the same amount of resources in the same amount of time, created Wikipedia. I know which one I think is the most useful. 100 million human thought hours. Those of you who pay salaries can put a number on 100 million human thought hours. That's a fraction of all the innovation that is currently happening and the time that is currently being able to be used doing things in the participatory culture. So that number for the internet-connected population alone is likely bigger than 1 million human thought hours, because that's what we, these generations, I myself one here, have wasted watching TV. One-way communication. It's not as fun as being creative. Because humans love filtering the world for each other. That's what we are doing here today. That's what I'm doing currently, and that's what other speakers are going to do when I'm done. We are, in that way, like neurons in a brain, a global, connected human brain. And the technological devices we use are just an aid to be able to communicate better and more swiftly. That's what we are wearing smartphones, that's why we might be wearing visors. And they will look good, I promise. We, as companies, can't act as if we are fortresses and try to keep everything for ourselves. To be able to innovate and to be able to be in this exponential, which is not in question, we need to be more like sponges, porous, breathing innovation in and out. Thank you for listening.